3, 2, 1, blast off. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the MSP Chat Podcast, your weekly visit with two talking heads talking with you about the services, strategies, and success tips you need to make it big in managed services. My name is Rich Freeman. I am Chief Analyst at Channel Master, the organization responsible for this show. I am joined, as I am every week, by your other co-host, our Chief Strategist at Channel Mastered, Eric Simpson. Eric, how you doing?
Doing great, Rich. Doing great. As we record this, we are just rounding the corner toward the end of January for folks that will catch this episode after it goes live. And I just got to say, Rich, it went by in the blink of an eye. I mean, to tell a secret, I've still got Christmas lights on the house that I have to take down.
Yeah. Well, you might want to take care of that before you leave town for your much-needed upcoming vacation. But
I will this weekend, I promise.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you making that confession on the show. I have a hunch you're not the only one out there who can say that. Well, let's dive into our story of the week here, Eric. Now, this show is scheduled to go out to the world on February 7th. So by the time people are first getting access to it, this news will be about 10 days old, but it's still pretty big news in our industry. So I kind of want to dive into it. This is the news that NinjaOne has acquired Dropsuite. NinjaOne, as we know, is a managed services platform for MSPs. They are actually by market share number 3 now. They have displaced Enable as number 3 in the market, according to Canalys and its latest numbers. Fast-growing company, pretty big company. And Dropsuite is a backup provider. And purchasing Dropsuite obviously enables NinjaOne to expand its platform. Now, this was not a small deal, Eric. Dropsuite is actually a relatively large company, something like 750 direct partners it works with, thousands of MSPs, it says, via distribution, a very large customer base. And Ninja bought them for $252 million. So $250 million for a company like Ninja that not that long ago was thought of as a smaller player in this space and up and coming. To be making a $250 million acquisition like this is quite something. But it's also significant in a number of other ways. So first of all, we've certainly spoken on this show multiple times about how increasingly in the realm of managed services, it is all about platforms. MSPs want fewer vendor relationships. They want to get more of what they consume and use from fewer vendors. Companies like Ninja, ConnectWise, Kaseya, Enable, etc., that have expansive platforms have a significant advantage with MSPs. Ninja actually had a backup product before, but this significantly expands its capabilities there in a very important part of the stack for MSPs. And it certainly kind of raises questions about where they go from here. Anything we say along those lines would be speculative right now. But you got to believe this is not the last step they're going to take in terms of expanding the platform. And I would expect their next moves to come in the area of security. The other thing that's interesting about this is, again, Dropsuite is not an insignificant company. And if you look at their most recent financial results, the numbers, the arrows are all pointing in the right direction. This is a profitable company that is growing. So on the face of it, they didn't necessarily need somebody to buy them. But they chose to do that because, as we've also talked about on the show, I at least believe there is an increasingly fuzzy future out there for standalone providers of backup software. To the degree that it's all about platforms for MSPs and even specifically with some security. Backup is part of a security stack at a minimum. MSPs are going to want to get their backup along with the rest of the security or a lot of the rest of the security tools that they use. And that makes that long-term future for a company like Dropsuite that really just does backup a little bit cloudy. And so, Axient, another great standalone backup provider, is now owned by ConnectWise. You got to assume, because they reached the same strategic conclusion that Dropsuite has now. And then, I recorded and posted a video about this on my blog, Channelholic, earlier this week as we record this, Eric. And I finished it up by speculating just a little bit, or asking a question, basically, inspired by what I just said. The future not looking terrific for backup-only companies. It raises the question about what the future might hold for Veeam. Because Veeam is a very substantial, very popular backup-only company. A lot of end users, a lot of partners, very, very successful company right now, but all they're doing is backup. As of December, they were valued at $15 billion. They show up on PitchBook's list of likely IPO candidates in 2025. If investors agree with the thesis I've been outlining here about the long-term future for standalone backup companies, and Veeam hasn't made significant additional steps, because they've made small steps, but additional significant steps towards having a complete security stack by the time that IPO happens, you got to wonder how great an IPO candidate they are. But at a $15 billion valuation as an acquisition target, which is the other alternative for them in terms of an exit, it would have to be a really big acquirer for that to happen. So I'm very curious to see what the future holds for Veeam.
Wow, Rich, a lot of analysis to unpack there, and appreciate how you've laid it out for us. I have a couple of questions. The first one would be, you mentioned that now NinjaOne is number 3, according to Canalys, how they rank these platforms. Was that because of the acquisition of Dropsuite, or before the acquisition of Dropsuite?
Definitely before. Yep.
So wow. So they're well entrenched in spot number 3 is what I'm taking from that. Second question. Veeam, I think when we, before Datto's acquisition, right, we thought of Veeam and Datto as kind of those head-to-head competitors. Remind us again what Datto was purchased for.
6-point-something billion when Kaseya bought them.
I think it was 6.4-ish, and it was Kaseya that acquired them. Now we're talking Veeam at a $15 billion kind of valuation. So it will be interesting if your thesis proves true, and this playbook that we're starting to see in the industry of this platform aggregation, acquisition, consolidation, creating this kind of one-stop shop for MSPs to engage in by these vendors, who might be well-heeled enough to consider an acquisition of a standalone backup provider at a $15 billion acquisition. I'm curious.
And of course, the third alternative that I didn't, I talked about an IPO, I talked about an acquisition, but a merger is also potentially a possibility where another large or substantial company could enter into an agreement to swap equity or something. And that, who knows, that might actually be the most realistic option for the company. But very interesting what they've built, and it will be very interesting to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting times.
So let's dive into your tip of the week here. And, a big part of the idea behind platform everything for MSPs is that's how MSPs get more profitable. And you got a profitability angle to this week's tip, Eric.
Certainly do, Rich. And yeah, so we've talked a lot about different components of how an MSP can increase their profitability, and of course the why behind it, right? We want to be more efficient. We want to build company valuation. The more profitable we are, the better we can plan and invest in growth and all these different things. But, talking about it makes it sound like, oh, you just follow these 3 steps or 4 steps and we can improve that. It's really, really difficult and challenging, Rich, for MSPs to, think about their financial health and the strategies to improve that, the way that we or they think of delivering service. I think I've mentioned this kind of analogy in a previous episode as well. It's kind of like we should be looking at, improving our financial performance and KPIs the same way we as MSPs look at improving our service delivery performance metrics, our CSAT scores with clients, and taking steps to achieve that. So 3 quick thoughts for this week. Number one, as you and a lot of our listeners know, I'm a fan of value-based pricing. I mean, we see MSPs out there traditionally pricing their services and solutions in several different ways. Typically, they could be, a per user type of pricing model, per device. I think that's kind of going away, the per device pricing model, as we're seeing more licensed user-based services being billed to us by our vendors. And henceforth, it's easier to price by user now because we're able to bundle a lot of services in and make it an easier decision during the sales process for buyers to buy. We see, value-based pricing models. Now, value-based pricing models is what I want to key on here, Rich. These are typically more difficult and challenging ways to price services. It requires, I think, a higher level of maturity from an understanding from our financial metrics, like what is our actual true cost of service delivery for labor, as well as these third-party products and services that we're bundling in. And then what is our target margin, and understanding that, and having the ability to sell potentially beyond what a target margin might be by having the ability to reflect the value of those services beyond what the individual cost of each of those bundled products and services and solutions are. So that takes a little bit more maturity, understanding really what our true costs are, and then selling the value above and beyond what the individual prices and a particular markup point might be. And this means that we have to have much more strategic types of sales approaches, selling towards business outcomes. We've talked about this as well, Rich, in the past on the show. So value-based pricing models, number one recommendation. And then number two, monitoring those financial metrics the way that we monitor and measure our clients' networks and infrastructures. Like what metrics from a financial performance perspective are green? Like where do we want to be? We want to see, incremental growth and profitability. What's yellow, what's red, right? So we're looking at, like one of the metrics that MSPs may not be tracking are like days outstanding. Like how long does it take clients to pay our invoices, right? Do we have, troublesome clients that not only pay us late on a regular basis, but argue about the invoices, right? Some of these typical challenges that MSPs still are dealing with today, I'm sad to say, right? How many of our clients are actually trued up? Like that was a big tip that we talked about on a previous podcast episode, right? When we had Nigel Moore on, he's like, no, remember, truing everybody up to our current rates is very, very important. So how much energy and effort are we putting into that? Are we setting goals to do that? And what are we doing to make sure that we achieve those goals? So monitoring those financial metrics and taking action to improve those where we want them to be. And the last one, Rich, is kind of diversifying our revenue streams in a different way that allows us to be realizing more profitable revenue that is recurring revenue. So, we do a lot of, I've worked with a lot of MSPs on M&A and valuation and things like that. And one of the basic, ways to value an organization, no matter what the organization is by EBITDA. But because MSPs realize revenue streams in maybe 7 or 8, or who knows, maybe 10 different buckets, right? Projects, maybe break fix, maybe you're selling block time. I know it's hard to hear this, Rich, right? Managed services, security, right? Licensing and renewals. Like, so there's all these different revenue streams, but the revenue stream that realizes the highest multiple at valuation, Rich, are managed recurring revenue services. So that is where we should skew the majority of our revenue from, and then diversifying a little bit. Yes, we can have some projects, and we can do some strategic things like that. But these are ways for us. Oh, and the last one, kind of diversifying those revenue streams and making sure that we don't have a large percentage of our revenue being delivered by a small percentage of our clients, that's also risky from a buyer's perspective, right? And when you lose, and I think as MSPs and our audience will attest, Rich, we've lost some pretty big clients along the way. And boy, when they represent, a large percentage, of revenue compared to the balance of our clients, it puts a hole in the ship and we take on water. And sometimes it's hard to bail fast enough to get the ship floating the right way.
So a few thoughts on that. The first one I will offer actually for any regular listeners who are a little bit confused about that prior episode with Nigel Moore. That's actually next week's episode 62.
Nigel and Rich.
Eric and I actually recorded the interview you will hear in a week's time with Nigel a little bit earlier. And so from our perspective, it's like, oh, that one's in the can. But you've got that to look forward to. The next episode of the show will feature an interview with the great Nigel Moore of the Tech Tribe.
Don't miss that. It's a great, great episode.
It is. And we're going to talk about truing up. And you may be surprised at how that kind of pops into the conversation, actually. It's good stuff. It's interesting to hear you kind of highlight value-based pricing because it's something that I've been writing about a little bit in the context of AI. One of the challenges for vendors in particular as they introduce AI-based products and agentic products out there is figuring out, how to assign prices and how to measure value. That in a perfect world, I think everyone who buys stuff wants to pay in alignment with the value they're getting from what they're buying. And everyone who sells something wants to be paid in alignment with the value that they're delivering. And so a value-based pricing scheme makes an enormous amount of sense, but it's also not easy to figure out exactly what that number is. And I'm working on some stuff for my blog that's going to go out. It'll actually go out like a week or so before this show does, about Atera, a NinjaOne company. They have this agentic AI feature coming to market very soon. They've finished everything about it. The piece that they're working on right now is the pricing, because they can't quite haven't figured out just yet what is that value and how do they assign that to. So that's a difficult thing to do, but if you can pull it off, I think it makes a ton of sense for the reasons that you outlined there. What I was thinking when you were talking about the finance metrics is it sounds so much like sales and marketing. For so many MSPs out there, sales and marketing is this unfamiliar discipline. And so, what am I supposed to be doing? But also, what am I supposed to be tracking and measuring? It's something that you either have to learn or outsource. And finance is very often the same story for IT services entrepreneurs. That's another sort of critical operational discipline that you've got to learn or get some outside help with, or both. And then last but not least, I'll just quickly say with respect to MRR, in every conversation I've ever had with people on the buy side of MSP, M&A, every last one of them, in my experience, says there's pretty much no such thing as too high a percentage of MRR. There is too low a percentage where you're not quite yet an attractive acquisition target. But it's not like if you got to market 90% MRR, someone's going to say that's a problem for us. Diversification is important, Eric, for the reasons that you said, but you're also absolutely right that the key number at sale time will be MRR.
Yeah, on that last point, I'll just share this. So, when we talk about the multiples between all these different types of revenue streams, so listen to this shocking statistic. So, let's say that for whatever reason, MSP is still delivering some break-fix services. For every dollar of break-fix billing that an MSP delivers, the multiple on that dollar taken in valuation terms is 15 cents. That's it. For managed services, it's closer to $2 for every dollar. So think about that, right? It's
that I've not heard that statistic before, and that's a really, really great and interesting statistic. So, folks, it is time for Eric and me to take a quick break before we come back. When we do come back on the other side of that break, we're going to be joined by MJ Shower. He is the Chief Community Officer at the Global Technology Industry Association, or GTIA. You might not be familiar with that name or acronym, but you probably are familiar with CompTIA. Well, for reasons we'll get into, CompTIA has gone one direction, and the community piece of that organization has gone on its own. MJ is the Chief Community Officer at GTIA, the community piece of what was CompTIA. And we're going to speak with him about GTIA, its mission, the value that it provides the channel, and why folks not familiar with it might want to check it out when we come back from this break, which we will do momentarily. And welcome back to part 2 of this episode of the MSP Chat Podcast, our Spotlight interview segment, where we are very pleased to be joined by NJ Schoer. He is the Chief Community Officer at the Global Technology Industry Association. And MJ, before I give you a chance to tell folks a little bit more about yourself, I've been waiting to ask someone who knows this question. Is the correct way to pronounce the acronym for the Global Technology Industry Association GTIA or GTIA?
You are correct with number 1. It is GTIA.
Okay. For what it's worth, as a longtime CompTIA member, I was hoping for GTIA, but okay, GTIA.
GTIA it is.
So tell folks a little bit about yourself and your role as Chief Community Officer at GTIA.
Sure. Thanks, Rich. So as you said, I'm MJ Schoer, Chief Community Officer at the Global Technology Industry Association. And in this role, I run a global team that manages our member recruitment and retention, our member communities, all of our member groups, our advisory councils, marketing, cybersecurity programs, internal operations programs as well. Basically, we focus on our 6 global regions where our members are currently. That's North America, the UK and Ireland, the Benelux region of Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands, the DACH region, which is Germany, Austria, Switzerland, ASEAN, which is a little more complicated. It's an economic bloc. It's called the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It's 10 countries. Best way to think of it is south of China, between India and Japan, but not the Koreas. How's that for a little complicated geography? And then ANZ, which is Australia, New Zealand. So we have our member communities in those regions. We have interest groups in those regions. We have our advisory councils, which are the headlights on the industry, and all of our other programming that goes along with that. So I'm really fortunate to have an amazing team that is laser focused on our members and driving positive impact for our members so that they can deliver their products and services with, even a little more expertise than they might on their own.
So I invoked the name CompTIA
Yes, you
at the
did.
beginning of this conversation here. For folks in our audience who are unaware, not up to speed, fill them in a little bit. So GTIA and CompTIA used to be the same organization. Why are they now separate organizations, and when did that happen?
Sure. So, I was an MSP myself for about 25 years, and I joined CompTIA as a member in the year 2000. And CompTIA was an acronym for the Computing Technology Industry Association, the very same vendor-neutral nonprofit trade association that is now today GTIA. And so last fall, we announced our intention that the Computing Technology Industry Association was selling the CompTIA brand and our revenue generating activities, which is the certification and training business of CompTIA, to a consortium of private investors, and it would spin off and become its own for-profit entity, which it is now, CompTIA Incorporated. And the trade association would continue forward, but under a new name, because we were known as CompTIA, but that was actually a brand. It was a brand name. It wasn't the official name of the organization, but it's how everyone knew us. So we needed to rename, but because of selling the brand. And so we've done that. And now we are the Global Technology Industry Association, or GTIA for short. So that's why the change, but it also gives us a really great inflection point, Rich, to focus in back on our members, on what our core has always been. As the association grew over the last 42 years, certainly in the last couple of years, we really saw that the needs of the trade association and the needs of the training and certification business were starting to diverge. And so the opportunity presented itself. It made sense. Our longtime CEO, Todd Thibodeau, always had this dream, hope, desire to set the association up to be financially secure in perpetuity in its future. And that's exactly what happened. And the result of the sale, the income from the sale of those assets accrued entirely to the association. And we are now very fortunate to be the stewards of a significant endowment that will fund our operations moving forward. So instead of having that revenue engine of the certification and training business, our revenue engine is now the earnings on our endowment. And that's going to outlive all of us. And I hope, like me, you guys aren't planning to go anywhere anytime soon.
Well, MJ, speaking about not planning to go anywhere anytime soon, both of us are former MSPs in a previous lifetime, right? So for the other MSPs in our audience, how does the GTIA membership benefit them, and why should they consider signing up?
Well, so I'm gonna take the why first, because then I think it'll provide the right context for everything else. The why is really simple right now. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to have more engagement and more influence on the future of your industry trade association than we've had the opportunity to have really almost since its founding 42 years ago. Now that we're in our new iteration, completely separated from CompTIA, we have the opportunity to reimagine everything that we're doing. Now, we've clearly stated it's business as usual. We're going to continue to offer the same benefits. We're not changing our dues structure, anything like that, to provide that stability through this transition. But it would be remiss of us not to use this as an opportunity to really look at what we're doing, how we're doing it. Are we doing it as well as we could? Are there new programs that we should think about that our members are looking for? Should we double down on some of our existing programs? Maybe pull back a little bit from ones if they're not getting any engagement. So that's the number one why in my book. There's an opportunity as an MSP to get involved with the association and really make a difference for the future. Now, from the benefit standpoint, one thing that hasn't changed is our membership dues are highly subsidized. You probably remember from your days, Eric, dues are $450 a year for an MSP member. It's hardly anything to even think about. And so if you can't extract, I'm even going to say 10, 20, 30 times the value of that, if not 100 times, then you're not trying. And like anything, if you can purchase something, but if you don't put anything into it, you're likely not to get too much out of it. But between our network events, which are always, the regional community meetings, we meet twice a year in person in each region, our flagship ChannelCon events, those are always rated as our highest, member value, because members love to come together, love to network, love to learn. And because we're a vendor neutral trade association, we don't take sponsorship dollars. Everyone's on the same level playing field. So whether you're looking at new vendors or partnering with other MSPs, everyone comes together under the big open tent to work together to make things better for everyone. And I've said this 100 times. If you've heard me before, I apologize, but it reminds me of my college fraternity back in the day. Our motto was give expecting nothing thereof. And when you get involved in a trade association like GTIA, if you come at it the right way, you will get returns that you never imagined. But if you're just looking for a penny, and maybe this isn't the right place for you, but between those networking events, all of the member education, the industry research, which I'll put on par with any other research organization out there. These are research reports that could cost tens of thousands of dollars if you were to go out and purchase them yourself. Everything is included with your GTIA membership, and every single employee is considered I shouldn't say considered a member, because it's the company that's considered a member. But every employee of the company, whether you're a one-person company or a 100-person company, if you're an MSP for that $450, every one of your employees get full access to, your GTIA benefits. And we've got tons of white papers and other things that have been produced by members. It really is for the members, by the members.
I'm a huge fan of of research in general, but especially CompTIA research. And you've just settled an issue for me, because just a few weeks back, right at the beginning of the year, I was on a webcast with Seth Robinson, who is part of the research organization over there. And I asked him, I think off the air, is the research organization staying with CompTIA or going to GTI? And he didn't know at that point. But now it sounds like we know, and it's sticking with GTIA, which is very good news.
Well, just to be fair and to be transparent, it actually it's sticking. The research organization itself split and has stayed with both. So the folks that have traditionally done the channel research stayed with the association, and the folks that are doing more of the research around workforce and career development and all of that went with CompTIA Inc.
Okay.
Well, fundamentally, you were correct.
Yeah. In terms of Seth and Carol and April, who's been on this show before, and the research that we look at, that's still part of GTIA. We were sent some press materials in advance of this interview, just to give us some background on GTIA, and there was something interesting in there that I wanted to ask you about. There was a quote somewhere in there that said, "We no longer have competing interests within our association," that this was sort of an opportunity for GTIA. So, and what kind of competing interests were you maybe dealing with before? How did they affect you, and how does not having those, benefit or free GTIA up in the future?
Sure. So when you think of legacy CompTIA, I'll just refer to it that way. It really was two organizations within one that were very codependent on one another. There was the training and certification business, which is how we generated our revenue, which other associations do that too. It's not uncommon for a nonprofit trade association to develop a credential or certification that becomes, a portion of their income. But the overwhelming majority of associations rely on membership dues for their income. We were very fortunate to be what we call a self-funded trade association. That's why we subsidize the dues very heavily, because we had this massive revenue generating arm. So what that meant is our board of directors was focused on running two businesses within one. Now they're focused just on the trade association. It also meant that on an annual basis, we would look at priorities for the organization and where we want to make our investments. There were some years where the majority of the investment might have gone into the trade association and the member benefits. There might be another year where more of that investment would go toward developing training and certifications. What became clear over the last several years is that there was almost kind of a natural divergence happening within the organization, even while we were still very much compatible and codependent. But the needs of the certification and training business and the needs of the nonprofit vendor neutral trade association were really starting to diverge a bit, whether that was in terms of technology requirements, internal systems. We still have lots of common back ends, but it became clear that both were looking for investment. And so this opportunity to sell and split the organization gave the training and certification business the infusion of capital it's looking for to really try and up the impact on the workforce. We all know there aren't enough skilled people coming into the tech industry, whether it's kids coming up through traditional school systems, non-traditional learners, career changers, whatever. There are huge opportunities, underserved populations, to bring more people into tech. And certainly the three of us know tech's a pretty cool place to be, right? It certainly served the three of us pretty well. And we've got lots of mutual friends in the industry. It's a great place to work. It's a unique industry, and we need more people. So the training and certification side really, really wants to help address that and be part of the solution to making good tech careers available to more people globally. And that requires a lot of money. And so by giving them the investment that they now have access to, they're going to be able to pursue that much faster than they would have otherwise. For us, it allows us to remain squarely focused on our members. We don't have to worry about competing for investment dollars, or I want to break away from this system because this would serve me better than that system. Our board of directors now isn't managing the responsibility of a piece of the business that generates a ton of capital and a piece of the business that's investing in the industry and education and things like that. They're able to focus. So we expect to have an even bigger impact than we've been able to have over the last 42 years on a go forward basis, solely focused on the members of our association. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, that definitely clarifies things for me, MJ. It's kind of like a single mission, right? Single focus. Kind of serve two interests is, can be difficult, right? So, I also want to call out a comment in some of the press release verbiage that you sent over. It's and I'm reading from it. We are now able to step back and look at what we do well. Kind of you mentioned this. Look at what we do well and double down on those things that are being highly utilized, or introduce some new things. Can you give our audience a little bit of, perspective in the crystal ball? Like, what are some of those things that you might consider not doing, and some things that you might want to do differently or bring on new things? Any kind of behind the scenes guidance there you can give us?
Well, I can tell you that, there haven't been any real hard decisions made yet, because we're still in the very early days, right? We're not even a month old at this point. We're just a couple of weeks old at this point when you think about it. We definitely know that things like our cybersecurity programs are highly valued by our members. So we're going to continue to invest there, the cybersecurity trust mark, the ISAL, things like that. We know that members are looking for a lot more when it comes to AI, right? But we don't want to jump on the hype bandwagon. That's been in our DNA for decades. We try to sift through the hype and focus on the real world impact that technologies may have. And so we're leaning even more heavily on our advisory councils, which are kind of those guiding lights. And AI is a perfect example, right? We've had an AI advisory council for about 7 years. And for, up until, pretty much 2023, everybody's like, yeah, okay, AI. Okay, sounds cool. Don't really see how it's going to impact me. And now I don't think there's anybody who doesn't understand how it could impact them. So we're really focusing on resources and education around developing what's needed to help bring AI, into the same kind of general practice acceptance of MSP best practices, cybersecurity best practices, et cetera. So I know we'll see something there. Again, we're not ready to announce anything specific, but, our ChannelCon brand, it's big. One thing I can tell you is we're going to rebrand our EMEA event to ChannelCon EMEA, because why do we call it something different? So we'll have ChannelCon still as our flagship event in the summer in North America. We'll have ChannelCon EMEA. Down the road, there could be ChannelCon, who knows, ChannelCon APAC, anything's possible. But it's all going to depend on what we're hearing from our members, what they're looking for, what they're asking. So that's where now is a unique opportunity. And over the next several weeks, we're going to host 3 open town halls, one for North America, one in the ASEAN ANZ region, and one in the UK European region. Open town halls, an open call for people to tell us what they'd like to see from GTIA on a go forward basis. We'll share a little bit about where we are and what we're thinking, but then the real focus of those is just an open invitation. Now's your chance. If you're a current member, former member, never been a member, and you've got ideas about how we as a trade association can help make your career the best it can be, your business the best it can be, in delivering your products and services to whomever your end customers are, we want to hear from you. Now's a perfect time to get that kind of input and to openly ask for it.
So this was in the press materials as well. There was some reference to the fact that having access to this endowment that you now have at GTIA will enable you to increase your charitable giving.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about the kind of charitable giving you do, have done, will do, and maybe the scale that you foresee that increasing.
Sure. So we've had, we've done on average over the years about $5 million in charitable giving for quite some time now. Some may be familiar with the Cecilia Galvin Scholarship that we do in partnership with Channel Pro. I know you guys both knew Cecilia, and we're going to continue to do that. Each of our member groups around the world, our regional communities, our interest groups, our advisory councils, our task forces, each of them get an allotted sum of money that they can then direct in their local region to a worthwhile charity. And we have a process to, take in the names of potential charities, vet them. They have to be, in USC, they need to be a 501c3. They need to be a charitable organization, not just a nonprofit. There are different flavors. But they need to be focused in some way, or some way associated with technology, whether they're bringing technology to underserved populations, whether they're helping communities that wouldn't ordinarily have access to technology get technology education, could be getting their hands on physical technology, providing, actual computers or whatever resources, could be supporting organizations that support disaster relief or other types of human service programs that involve technology. But basically anything that is in any way connected to the tech industry and growing the tech workforce and enabling communities that otherwise might have a struggle bringing programs forward. As I have the very good fortune of being able to travel the world to visit our global regions. I make it a point to get into each region at least once a year. And I was in Auckland, New Zealand, this fall. I think it might have been September or October timeframe. And I met a young woman, and she was really interesting. And she interviewed me for her own podcast. And I just thought she was a member who had a podcast. But then she actually got up as part of a group who our ANZ community had made a donation to last year. And she shared the most inspiring story. She's from the Maori indigenous population in New Zealand. And I've got to tell you, New Zealand, if you're not aware of it, New Zealand has embraced their indigenous population as if there's no separation anymore to who's indigenous and who, is not indigenous. But they've really broken down those historical barriers that you see. And so there's such better access. But this group was helping communities that are still not quite pulled into the full opportunity, I guess, that New Zealanders have. But she was talking about how she was, came from a difficult upbringing, had been in trouble with the law a little bit, but now she was a mom and had a successful career in technology, all thanks to this organization that, through donations from us and other like organizations, have been able to give, kids and young adults who didn't have access to learn about tech careers and go into technology to learn about tech careers and go into them. And now she's an influencer and a podcaster and a video blogger and the whole 9 yards. It was really something. And I've heard those stories from every region of the world. And so that's where we want to make an impact, where we can actually see the fruits of that, change experiences on the ground. That's where we want to do it. And we've announced our intention to raise our charitable giving to tens of millions of dollars annually. That may not happen in our first year out of the gate because it's going to take us a while to get the infrastructure in place. And I don't know if this comes as a surprise to you, but it was certainly eye-opening for some of us. It's not easy to give away that much money. It's quite a process to find, the right types of organizations, vet them, make sure that the money is going to go to the stated purpose. And that's a lot of money to give away. So we've got there'll be an announcement shortly about the formation of a charitable committee that's going to be driving this. That'll be made up of board and non-board members. And we'll have an entire, a very transparent, fluid, efficient process to do this. But this is another area where by being engaged as a member in the association, you have an opportunity to help direct where these charitable dollars go. And that's a pretty amazing thing to be a part of.
Well, MJ, that's got to be just amazingly gratifying to be in a position to be able to do that and to hear these stories, right? I mean,
Yeah.
very,
That's the hard,
very,
we're going to build a whole library of these stories to share on our website so that we can, people can see the impact of being involved and helping to do this work. It's amazingly humbling.
that's amazing. Um, so, I think it's no surprise to our audience that a lot of the folks that we have on the show, like yourself, MJ, myself, Rich, I mean, we've been in the channel a little while now, right? I like to say we're kind of old channel dogs, and in fact, I remember, I was a member of CompTIA when I had my MSP in the early 2000s. I actually participated in helping create the first managed services
Yeah, I remember that.
certification. I mean, that dates us, right? And more
Yeah.
recently, Rich and I, through Channel Master, the organization responsible for our podcast here, we've contributed to research CompTIA a little bit ago as well. So, I mean, beyond the value of the research reports that we all, love to consume and apply in our businesses, whether we're MSPs or otherwise, what other membership benefits of GTIA do you feel are maybe potentially the most overlooked by members?
Well, it's definitely the research.
I took the easy one out. Yeah, I took the easy one out. What else?
That is, I would also say, we've got some incredible member ed courses. We've got a library of over 30 courses. We have a professional, we have just a top-notch team of educational professionals who work with consultants and subject matter experts and build these courses. We can, if there's a need for a course and we don't have it, we've got the ability to go and build it. So I think that is an underutilized resource. I shouldn't say underutilized. It's actually well utilized, but I don't know. It could be even more utilized, right? It's definitely one that I think is high value. The other thing are our member produced guides. We've got a basic and an advanced cybersecurity guide. We've got guides that focus on the vendors and distributors. We've got guides that focus on the MSPs in terms of basic best practices around marketing and sales and other things. These are built by members based on member experience. So it's built by people just like the people consuming it. And then our professional staff packages it all up and puts it together and makes it easy to consume. I think that's another terrific resource that's available. There's just, the one problem we don't have is having enough benefits. The one problem we do have is making it as easy as we can for our members to find them and consume them. And that's something that we're going to definitely improve on as the days and weeks, roll ahead. We're trying to make things much easier to find and consume. Our cybersecurity ISAL is a tremendous resource. I was at an event this past fall, and I don't know if many people know this, but that's how I actually came to CompTIA. I've been an active member for a long time, a highly engaged member for a long time, but I was doing some consulting back in, I think it was 2019. I'd sold my MSP in 2015, really before the big M&A wave, and went through another roll-up acquisition after that. And then after my contract was up, I decided to just do some consulting, and CompTIA reached out and asked me if I would do a quick project for them. And that project turned into what is now the GTIA ISAL. And that is a threat intelligence sharing organization. So it's near and dear to my heart, but it takes this complex this complex world of cyber threat intelligence, which, you guys know the cliche, it's like drinking from a fire hose. This is more like getting pinned to a wall by a water cannon. There's so much information and it can get so deeply technical. And this boils it down to, simpler language, especially for MSPs who aren't able to have a true SOC analyst on staff or cybersecurity engineer on staff. So the ability to know what threats are out there and how they might impact, your business as well as your customers, that's huge. The cybersecurity education that we're building around that is tremendous. the white papers that come out of our advisory councils that talk about coming trends or things that are developing or changing in the channel and how that impacts and fits with your business model. And the list just goes on and on. I mean, there's even the mundane, I shouldn't say mundane. I'm going to have somebody yell at me for saying that, but there are some, just business benefits too, like FedEx discounts and things like that, Hertz discounts, that have value. And we're very fortunate that our members, historically have purchased enough CompTIA certifications that we qualify as a CompTIA customer to still extend the 20% discount on CompTIA certification. So that was a member benefit that some of our members were concerned about losing, and we've been able to maintain that. So as a GTIA member, you still get very preferential pricing on CompTIA training and certifications if you've got engineers that want to go down that road. And we're looking at other opportunities to extend similar types of benefits for potentially other trainings that are out and certifications that are out there. So there's just a wealth of member benefits available. And, not to mention the value of the event attendance that you can go to. All of our meetings are free for members. So that alone is a significant value add.
So speaking of meetings and events, you mentioned ChannelCon earlier on, and there's also the Communities and Councils Forum, which is coming up at the beginning of March. Tell folks a little bit about both of those events, kind of what happens at those events, and then where they can go to get information and maybe register.
Sure. So you can go out to gtia.org/events to see the list and to register. So the first one that's coming up, actually our very first community meeting of the year, is happening on February 6th. Had to make sure I got the date. Yes, February 6th in Mechelen, Belgium. That's our Benelux group, community that's getting together. They're first out of the gate this year. But then we've got CCF, the Communities and Councils Forum, coming up in Chicago, the 10th to the 12th of March. And that's where our North America community comes together and gathers. So we have the North America community meeting. We have our North America Spotlight Awards. So we'll be giving out our Spotlight Awards, which are independently judged. So these are member awards for individuals and organizations. You can, there's cybersecurity leadership, there's community leadership, there's a diversity category, advancing women's category, innovative organizations, innovative vendors, innovative MSPs, etc. And that's a nice night, a nice dinner to celebrate. And what's neat about our Spotlight Award programs, those happen in 3 regions around the world currently. The judges are not from the awarding region. So these are truly independently judged based on the merit and the strength of the applications. These aren't pay-to-play awards. People put in their nominations and then judges are recruited. So we have judges from the UK and Ireland region, Benelux, DACH, ASEAN, and ANZ, who will review all the nominations for the North America Awards and vote. That ensures nobody gets, cronyism or favoritism, or your best friend gets the award. It really is based on the quality of the award. And we've seen these programs grow year after year. It's really nice to see how much the industry values those. So that's part of CCF, is that nice celebratory evening with a professional MC and nice cocktail hour dinner that'll happen on that Tuesday. Our advisory councils come together for working sessions. The community itself has breakout working sessions. We have our Genius Cafe where subject matter experts, I know Eric, you've participated in that before, at least I'm pretty sure you have, act as a subject matter expert in an area of expertise, and members can sign up for 20-minute one-on-one sessions. We're launching another cohort of our mentorship program where we put mentors and mentees together for a year for peer learning and growth. And we do a charitable event there as well. It's kind of a give back, a GTIA gives back event as part of it. So that's a really great, fun meeting. That's usually somewhere between 200 and 300 attendees because it's a region, it's focused on just North America. Then ChannelCon in the summer is our flagship event. That always draws somewhere between recent years between 12 and 1,500 attendees. Usually it has a more traditional trade show component to it. Though again, because we're a vendor neutral trade association, the vendor exhibit floor, every single vendor or associate that exhibits, it's part of their membership. They don't pay extra for it. Everyone has the exact same size booth, and members rate that very highly year after year because they say it's a less intimidating environment to meet and talk to vendors and explore other vendors because you don't have anyone with the, huge central pavilion or the bigger booth than another organization that to potentially grab your attention. So that's nice. All the sessions of thought leadership, there's no selling from the stage at a GTIA event. So it's all, we have a call for speakers. We get submissions from lots of members and non-members. ChannelCon's open to anyone, whereas CCF is a member-only event. But that's our flagship event, and it's always great. We always throw a heck of a good party at that event, and we always have a really great keynote speaker as well. This past summer, it was Kara Swisher. She was fascinating to listen to. Boy, talk about someone who pulls no punches. But she was great. She was absolutely terrific. So that's a great event. And again, it's free to attend for members. So for anyone in our member companies.
Well, I'll say Channel Mastered was among the exhibitors at ChannelCon last year. I'm sure we will be again. Eric and I actually co-led a session at ChannelCon last year. We haven't submitted anything yet, but I'm sure we're yeah. We'll put our heads together and get something in there because we would love to do that again.
That's great. Thank you.
You're talking about the ISOW. There's nothing like the ISOW in the industry, and honestly, there's nothing like GTIA in the industry, and both of those play a really kind of critical role in the channel. So we are unabashed fans of the organization.
Thank you.
On the show, Channel Mastered. For folks in the audience who are new to you, want to learn more about GTIA, where should they go next?
So I would recommend a couple things. To learn more about GTIA, go out to our website, which is gtia.org. Go to LinkedIn, follow our LinkedIn page. If you go to LinkedIn and search GTIA or Global Technology Industry Association, we'll come right up. Our handle across social media is at GTIA Official. So you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, even X. I still want to say Twitter. And then for myself, if you go out to LinkedIn, just search MJ Shore. I'm pretty easy to find. I think it's LinkedIn. If I remember right, it's linkedin.com/in/MSHOER. My last name is spelled a little differently. It's SHOER, but definitely find me, follow me on LinkedIn. You're also welcome to email me. I've got a super easy email address. It's just mjshore@gtia.org. I love hearing from members and people in the industry. Spend most of my days talking with folks like you, and I love that. There's nothing better. And I thank you both for the opportunity to share a little bit more about GTIA. I can talk about it all day long, but it speaks volumes more when folks like you are sharing your thoughts about it. So I very much value and appreciate your membership and your engagement and the kind things you say, because as you said, I believe it in my core. We occupy a very unique spot in the industry, and with that comes a lot of responsibility to do the right thing for the industry. And so we're a sponge to constantly evaluate what could we be doing differently, what could we be doing more of, what should we do less of, so that we have that positive impact and really help this industry make a difference in the world, which we do. And it's great to watch. It's even better to be a part of. And it's a pretty awesome experience to be a part of.
MJ, always a pleasure. Thanks.
Same, Rich. Thank you. And Eric as well. It's always great to see you.
I appreciate your time and for bringing a lot of clarity to GTIA. Very interesting stuff. Folks, we're going to take a quick break now. When Eric and I come back on the other side, he and I will share a few final thoughts about this conversation with NJ Shower of GTIA. We'll have a little fun, wrap up the show. Stick around. We will be right back. And welcome back to part 3 of this episode of the MSP Chat podcast. Great conversation there with NJ Shower, timely, obviously because GTIA is so new, and you and I both have heard a lot about the new name and the background to that and so on, but to actually get a chance to speak with the chief community officer over there and kind of get it firsthand was helpful and clarifying. A couple of things we spoke about the unique role that CompTIA in the past and GTIA now play in the channel, and this is something that you and I have spoken about many times through the years. There really isn't an organization. There are certainly other industry bodies out there, particularly maybe in the cybersecurity area. But there just isn't anything quite like GTIA in terms of being both an advocate for and an enabler to the channel, just a source of education and resources and advocacy and all this great stuff that the channel needs to grow and thrive and prosper. I've always appreciated the value that they add over there. And it's good to know, even after this sale of the certification and training part of CompTIA to private equity, that goes on. And if anything, they are in better shape, apparently, financially, to continue that mission, which leads into the second thing. I was aware in the past, Eric, that there was charitable giving happening out of CompTIA out into the world. I was not aware it was $5 million a year, actually. And so that was an interesting number to learn. And it was also great to learn that this endowment coming out of the CompTIA sale actually sets them up to do more, and enough more that they actually have to spend some time figuring out how to spend that money or donate that money responsibly. So that was interesting stuff, and sort of a further reflection of that kind of function GTIA plays in the IT industry and in the channel that nobody else I'm aware of does.
You're absolutely right, Rich. And it's great to know that the torch is still being, burning brightly, let's say. And, for me, I've been a CompTIA member ever since, my early days as an IT provider, before we were even, one of the first MSPs around 2004, 2005. So I've received a tremendous amount of value and benefit from the CompTIA relationship all these years. And we at Channel Master, the organization responsible for this podcast, we are members of CompTIA, now GTIA, soon to be. And we have, both you and I, Rich, have contributed to CompTIA over the years in panels and communities and delivering. I helped with their first managed services certification so many years ago, right? And in ongoing research and things like that. So what I love about the organization is that spirit that, we as many MSPs share, is like, we are here to help, and the rising tide lifts all boats. And they've done a great job supporting the IT industry in all the things that they do. And I've been, happy to try to help in that mission and collaborate together for the benefit of all the members and the IT community in general. The things that they do, that we don't hear a lot about, lobbying and things like that on behalf of the IT industry, which is great. I was also pleasantly surprised to understand how large this endowment is, and how they are, thoughtfully considering how to manage it and distribute it in ways that meet their mission statement. I was aware that they did sizable contributions, but not to the numbers, like you said, that MJ shared with us. Super commendable.
And it just sheds a little, and one of the big questions that came out of the very surprising news late last year about CompTIA selling to Tomer Bravo and another private equity investor was how they announced right away the community lives on independently, but how are they going to be able to do that? Because the for-profit training and certification part of CompTIA was where the money came from for the community. And the answer that emerged relatively quickly was an endowment enabled or created by the sale. But how big an endowment? You're right. We've kind of gotten a feel just from this conversation with MJ. You kind of get a feel this is a substantial endowment, and it's not something that we need probably to worry about. Is it big enough? Will it last long enough for the organization to continue serving the community? So that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we've got time now for just one last thing. And this is actually a topic that Eric and I have spoken about before on a different podcast that we used to do years back. And you'll see why I'm bringing it up again. There's a particular angle to this. But it turns out that as we're recording this right now, people are lining up at the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens to get a look at, take a picture with, and get a whiff of Amorphophallus gigas. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's otherwise known more popularly as the corpse flower. And it is a very large flower. It only blooms every few years. And when it does, it apparently emits an odor unlike anything you've ever heard or smelled before, and probably a whole lot worse. Now, I say apparently because I've never been anywhere near one of these things when it's in bloom, but Eric Simpson has. So, Eric, tell us a little bit about what that experience is like.
Yes, Rich. Yeah. So, we did cover this years ago on another podcast that we were both co-hosts on, and I guess you could look at it one of either ways. Interestingly, or lucky enough to have a corpse flower at the Fullerton Arboretum. This is where I, enjoyed the experience of seeing this, very beautiful flower that smells like year-old rotting flesh. And I'm trying to not gross people out, but it makes you pucker up, man. It is rancid. It is nasty. And it's an experience. It's a beautiful, beautiful flower. But you can smell it like 100 feet away. Like it is pungent. It's probably the best way I'll leave that description.
So if it's blooming in Brooklyn, I assume it's blooming in Fullerton as well. Are you going to get back on the line?
I'm going to have to figure out if they still have one here or how that works. I haven't seen anything announced. I did read something on the internet, Rich, recently where there's one somewhere else in the world outside of the United States. I thought I saw that. But I don't know if it's kind of like the cicadas every 17 years, they all just come out everywhere, or if it's different life cycles. I don't know how that works, but I will definitely be checking in on that after this episode.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on the show. That's all the time we've got for you this week. We're going to be back again in another week's time with another episode of the show for you. Until then, I'll simply remind you that this is both a video and an audio podcast. So if you are listening to us, but you'd like to check us out on video, go to YouTube, look up MSP Chat. You're going to find us there. If you are watching, but you're also into audio podcasts, go to Google, Apple, Spotify, you name it, wherever you get your audio podcasts, you're probably going to find us there too. However you find us, please subscribe, rate, review. It's going to help other people discover and enjoy the show just like you do. This show is produced by the great Russ Johns. It is edited by the great Riley Simpson. They are part of the team with Eric and myself at Channel Mastered. They would be ready, willing, and able to create a podcast for you if you want that. And podcasts are truly one of the very smallest things that we do for our clients at Channel Mastered. If you want to learn more about Channel Mastered, go to www.channelmastered.com. Channel Mastered has a sister organization called MSP Mastered. That's Eric working directly one-on-one with MSPs to help them grow and optimize their business. And you can learn more about that organization at www.channelmastered.com. mspmastered.com. So once again, we thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you in a week. Until then, folks, please remember, as always, you can't spell channel without MSP.